So, what if I told you that just staring at your computer screen right now is physically tricking your brain into thinking you're being hunted by a predator?
I mean, it sounds completely like a sci-fi premise, right?
Yeah, totally. And that this like invisible constant stress is literally altering the physical structure of your brain while you just sit there answering emails.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But it is a very real, documented biological response. We are essentially sending our nervous systems through this daily obstacle course of perceived threats, and it takes a massive toll on our cellular health.
Right, and that is the exact kind of hidden mechanism we're hunting down today because, if you're listening to this, you're probably feeling that tension.
Oh, absolutely.
You want the benefits of a highly optimized, healthy life, but you also don't want to spend 3 hours a day tracking macros or doing cold plunges and, basically treating your wellness like a second full-time job.
Right. Nobody has time for that.
Exactly. You want to be well-informed, but you need your time respected. So today, our mission for you is cutting through all that overwhelming noise. We're doing a deep dive into an incredible stack of sources we've gathered, collectively acting as this definitive guide to optimizing health span and metabolic vitality.
Yeah, and what we're looking for are the highest return, lowest effort biological shortcuts. Things that bridge the gap between cutting-edge clinical research and your actual daily life.
Precisely. And the overarching theme here, right, isn't about sheer willpower or punishing workout routines.
No, not at all.
Hmm.
What connects all these sources is a focus on what we can call mechanical and systemic overrides.
Mechanical overrides. I like that phrase.
Yeah, it's about using your own ancient biology to just effortlessly dictate your modern metabolic and cognitive states. It's all about finding specific leverage points, like a tiny, precise action that creates a massive cascade of positive effects throughout your entire bodily system.
Okay, so I want to dive straight into the foundation of that system, which is metabolic momentum. Because, well, everything starts with the energy you put into your body and how your body immediately processes it.
Exactly. The raw materials.
Right. And the research heavily points to the science of protein here, specifically pulling from the work of Dr. Gabrielle Leon and Dr. Bill Campbell. The overarching rule they propose is hitting a minimum of 30 grams of protein per meal.
Which, to put it in perspective, means aiming for about 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of your ideal body weight daily.
Okay, but let's unpack this. Why 30 grams? Like, why not just eat 15 grams 6 times a day?
Well, to understand that specific threshold, you have to completely rethink what muscle actually does.
Yeah.
We usually think of muscle purely in terms of locomotion or aesthetics.
Right, like how much you can lift or how you look in a t-shirt.
Exactly. But biologically, muscle is your body's primary metabolic sink. It's the main reservoir where glucose goes to be safely disposed of and utilized. The problem is, as we age, our bodies develop a condition known as anabolic resistance.
Wait, anabolic resistance, meaning the body is actively resisting the process of building or maintaining that muscle tissue.
Precisely. Imagine your muscles are getting kind of hard of hearing as they get older. When you're 18, a small amount of protein sends a loud, clear signal to your body to synthesize new muscle.
Right.
But when you're 40 or 50, that same small amount of protein is just a whisper. The muscle literally doesn't hear it, so it doesn't repair or grow.
Oh, wow. So you have to shout to wake the system up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To overcome this deafness, you need a much louder signal. Clinical data shows that a concentrated dose of high-quality protein, specifically crossing that 30-gram threshold in a single sitting, is the exact volume required to trigger muscle protein synthesis in an adult.
That makes so much sense. And the sources detail something else about protein that really caught my attention, which is the thermic effect.
Oh, yeah, the 25% rule.
Right. Apparently, protein has a 25% thermic effect, meaning a quarter of the calories contained in the protein you consume are burned up just by the mechanical process of your body digesting it.
It's incredible.
So, like, if you eat 100 calories of chicken breast, your body burns 25 of those calories just breaking down the amino acids. It's almost like protein acts as a bouncer at a nightclub, keeping the bad cravings out while burning a quarter of its own energy just doing its job.
The bouncer analogy holds up incredibly well, actually, particularly when you introduce a concept from the sources called the protein leverage hypothesis.
Okay, what is that?
It's this fascinating clinical observation about human behavior. It posits that human beings will subconsciously keep eating and overeating total calories until their baseline protein needs are met for the day.
Wait, really? So if I eat a massive plate of pasta and a bag of potato chips, and I feel completely stuffed, but I still find myself wandering back to the pantry an hour later looking for a snack,
Yeah,
my body is actually just desperately searching for amino
that
acids.
is the exact core of the hypothesis. Your body is sending out a distress signal saying, we have plenty of energy from fats and carbs, but we don't have the structural building blocks to repair our cells. Keep eating until we find some.
That is wild.
And Dr. Bill Campbell's lab findings illustrate this beautifully. His team took a group of sedentary women and simply instructed them to increase their daily protein intake to those optimal levels we just discussed.
Did they have them start lifting weights or, like, deliberately cut out carbs?
No, not at all. They didn't change their exercise routines, and they didn't actively restrict any other macronutrients. They just prioritized hitting that protein threshold.
And what happened?
Well, simply by optimizing the protein input, these women naturally lost body fat and gained muscle. Their bodies finally received the biological signal to stop overeating, so they stopped hunting for extra food.
Yeah.
And that massive 25% thermic effect from digesting the protein basically handled the rest of the fat loss.
That is a phenomenal override just based on what you put on your plate. But let's look at the immediate aftermath of a meal, because this brings us to a protocol from Dr. Robert Lufkin.
The 10-minute walk.
Right. The instruction is remarkably simple. Take a brisk 10-minute walk immediately after finishing a meal, especially dinner. Now, I have to push back on this one.
Okay, let's hear it.
I spent years believing that weight loss and fat management were strictly about calories in versus calories out. But the Japanese study in our sources claims that men lost deadly visceral fat without cutting calories or getting functionally fitter just by taking a short walk after eating.
Yeah, just walking.
Are you telling me a 10-minute stroll overrides a caloric surplus? Like, how does that even make biological sense?
I get it. It definitely challenges the traditional calorie model. But it makes perfect sense when you look at the mechanics of blood sugar and hormones. Normally, when you eat a meal, especially one with carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises.
Right.
In response, your pancreas secretes insulin. Think of insulin as a chemical key that travels through your bloodstream, unlocking your cells so the glucose can enter and be used for energy.
Okay, so insulin clears the sugar. That sounds like a good thing.
It is necessary, yeah.
Mm.
But insulin has a secondary, highly potent function. It is the body's primary fat storage hormone.
Oh, I see.
When insulin levels are high, the biochemical pathways for burning fat completely shut down. Your body essentially locks the vault. It assumes that since there's fresh energy in the blood, it should store any excess as fat for a famine that, well, never actually comes.
So as long as insulin is circulating, you are just trapped in storage mode.
Exactly the problem. But here's the mechanical override. When you take a brisk walk immediately after eating, the physical contraction of your leg muscles triggers a cellular alarm system. It activates an enzyme called AMPK.
AMPK. Okay, what does that do?
You can think of AMPK as an emergency responder that tells the muscle cell, hey, we're moving, we need energy right now. This enzyme forces a specialized transporter called GLUT4 to rise to the surface of the muscle cell.
And what does GLUT4 do?
GLUT4 acts as a side door to the cell that opens completely independently of insulin. It does not need the insulin key. It acts like a vacuum, pulling glucose directly out of your bloodstream and into the muscle to fuel your walk.
Wow. So you are basically siphoning the sugar out of your blood manually before the pancreas even has time to panic and flood your system with insulin.
That is the exact mechanism.
Oh.
Because you're clearing the glucose mechanically via muscle contraction, your body never secretes that massive wave of insulin.
That's amazing.
And without that high insulin signal, your body never gets the chemical command to store fat. It can shift back into a fat-burning state much faster. That's why the men in that Japanese study lost visceral fat, the really dangerous organ-strangling fat deep in the belly.
Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't because a 10-minute walk burns hundreds of calories. It was because the walk managed the hormonal signals that dictate what the body actually does with the food that was just consumed.
That is incredible. A 10-minute mechanical hack to bypass your body's fat storage hormone. So, okay, walking clears the glucose and stops the insulin spike. But insulin isn't the only hormone dictating our health.
Far from it.
The sources make it clear that if metabolism fuels the system, stress and our modern environments are what burn it out. Which brings us back to that provocative idea about staring at screens from the intro.
Right, to the command center.
Yeah, how does looking at a laptop actively flood our bodies with stress hormones?
This is a massively overlooked area of systemic health involving the visual system. We have to look at the work of Dr. Bryce Applebaum and the concept of peripheral pointing. To understand the stress response, we really have to look at our evolutionary history.
Okay.
For our ancestors, when they were safe and relaxed, their visual field was naturally wide and expansive. They were taking in the horizon, casually scanning a landscape. That wide panoramic gaze physically activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest state.
The safe zone, where recovery actually happened.
Yes, but when a predator appeared in the brush, or when they were actively hunting an animal, their vision instantly narrowed. They locked in on a single point. They got tunnel vision.
Okay, I see where this is going.
That intensely focused, narrow gaze activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response. It immediately signals the adrenal glands to pump out cortisol and adrenaline so they could survive the encounter.
And now we sit at desks and voluntarily force ourselves into that exact same narrow focal point, staring at a 2D rectangle for 8 or 10 hours a day.
Exactly. We are mechanically signaling to our primitive brain that a predator is staring us down all day long. It's a profound evolutionary mismatch. No wonder modern workers feel completely exhausted and burned out by 5 p.m., even if they haven't done any physical labor.
Their nervous system has basically been running a marathon.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. What is the override? Because, we can't all throw away our laptops and go look at the horizon.
Right. We still have to work. The override is peripheral pointing. While you are looking at your screen, you consciously practice expanding your awareness to objects in your far left and right peripheral vision.
So you don't actually look away from the screen.
No, you don't move your eyes away from the screen, but you widen your mental focus to include the walls or objects beside you. And you combine that with the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
The sources mention that professional athletes use this peripheral expansion to drop into flow states before a name, right? And that people with severe claustrophobia use it to stop panic attacks in enclosed spaces like elevators.
Yeah, it's incredibly effective.
Just by changing how they visually process the room, they completely shut off the panic.
Because you are using a physical muscle group, the muscles controlling your eyes, to send an undeniable chemical safety signal to the brain. It grounds the nervous system instantly.
Which perfectly sets up the next mechanical override, moving from the eyes to the lungs. Specifically, Dr. Andrew Weil's 4-7-8 breath protocol.
Ah, yes. A classic.
The method is breathing in quietly through your nose for 4 seconds, holding the breath for 7 seconds, and forcibly blowing air out through your mouth for 8 seconds. You do this for 4 cycles, twice a day.
Simple but powerful.
Yeah, there are a million breathing exercises out there, from box breathing to Wim Hof. But Dr. Weil is quoted in the sources calling this specific ratio more powerful than pharmaceutical anti-anxiety drugs. Why is this exact count so vital?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it directly targets the fallout from that fight-or-flight hormone we were just talking about, cortisol.
Right.
Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated in the bloodstream constantly. And here is a terrifying biological reality. Sustained, high levels of cortisol are literally toxic to the hippocampus, which is the seahorse-shaped structure in your brain responsible for emotion regulation and memory formation.
Toxic in what way?
Cortisol physically dissolves the dendrites there, causing actual structural brain damage and memory loss over time.
Wait, really? Just being chronically stressed physically shrinks your brain?
It does. It literally degrades the tissue.
Okay.
The 4-7-8 breath acts as a tourniquet for that damage. It works because the long 8-second exhale mechanically stimulates the vagus nerve, which wanders from your brainstem down through your chest and abdomen. The vagus nerve acts as a master switch for the autonomic nervous system. That long exhale forcefully slows the heart rate and pulls you out of that cortisol-drenched sympathetic state. It physically stops the structural brain damage in its tracks by halting the cortisol drip.
Okay, so expanding our visual field and doing the 4-7-8 breath stops the active damage. But how do we repair the tissue that has already been degraded?
That is the next logical step.
Right, and that transitions us to the work of Dr. Gusong Liu and a highly specific compound, magnesium L-threonate, commonly known as Magtine. The recommended protocol is 140 to 200 milligrams daily. Now, I know a lot of people take magnesium supplements to help them sleep or stop muscle cramps, but the sources explicitly state that standard magnesium from the grocery store barely reaches the brain. Why is that?
It comes down to a physiological security checkpoint called the blood-brain barrier. It's a tightly woven mesh of cells designed to protect the brain from toxins and pathogens in the blood.
Makes sense.
Standard magnesium forms, like magnesium citrate or oxide, are bulky or poorly absorbed. They literally bounce off this barrier and are just excreted by the body.
So you're basically taking a supplement for your brain that never actually arrives at the brain.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
But magnesium L-threonate is an entirely different molecular structure. The magnesium is chemically bound to L-threonate, which is a specific metabolite of vitamin C.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and the blood-brain barrier readily recognizes and transports vitamin C metabolites. So that L-threonate acts like a VIP pass, escorting the magnesium directly through the security checkpoint and into the brain tissue.
And once it gets inside, the results in the clinical trials are just wild. The data showed a 9-year reversal of cognitive decline in older adults. People in the studies described it as a windshield wiper for the mind, clearing out the brain fog.
It's a great description.
And the sleep data was fascinating, too. It didn't necessarily force people to sleep for more hours, but it completely shifted their sleep architecture. It reduced the flimsy, restless, light sleep and dumped them straight into deep, restorative, slow-wave and REM sleep. People reported having these incredibly vivid, almost cinematic dreams.
What's fascinating here is those vivid dreams are actually a byproduct of the repair process. Remember how we discussed cortisol destroying the hippocampus?
Yeah, the brain shrinking.
Well, once magnesium L-threonate enters the brain, it actively increases the density of synapses. It enhances synaptic plasticity, which is the brain's physical ability to form, reorganize, and strengthen new neural connections.
Wow.
It isn't just masking a symptom of fatigue. It provides the raw material to physically rebuild the neural network while you are immersed in those deep sleep cycles.
It is brilliant to see how these mechanisms connect.
Yeah.
We have used protein and walking to optimize the metabolic fuel, and we've used vision, breath, and magnesium to protect and rebuild the brain. But there is a third, foundational piece to this puzzle: the plumbing and the microecosystem. Because, even a perfectly tuned brain and metabolism will eventually break down if the underlying system is starved of raw materials or if the waste management system is totally clogged.
This is where we confront the stark physical realities of human anatomy and our modern environment.
Let's get right into the macro plumbing with Dr. Trisha Pasricha and what she calls Poophoria.
Yes, Poophoria.
Which is the physiological joy and lightness of effortless digestion and elimination, and the primary culprit stealing this joy from the modern world: the standard 90-degree sitting toilet.
The modern toilet is a relatively recent invention in human history. From an anatomical standpoint, it is an absolute disaster for our pelvic floor.
The sources explain that sitting upright at a 90-degree angle physically chokes off a crucial muscle called the puborectalis. To visualize it, the puborectalis muscle wraps around your colon like a lasso. When you sit normally, that lasso stays tight. It functions exactly like a tight cap on a tube of toothpaste. If you try to force the toothpaste out without taking the cap off, you end up employing the Valsalva maneuver.
Which is the medical term for bearing down and straining.
Exactly. And over time, that pressure damages the pelvic floor, creates hemorrhoids, and causes chronic constipation.
The override here is incredibly low-tech, though. Just elevate your knees above your waist. By using a specialized stool or even just a stack of books under your feet, you shift your body into a natural squatting position.
And what does that do to the lasso?
Squatting completely relaxes and unkinks that puborectalis muscle. It essentially takes the cap off the toothpaste tube, allowing gravity to do the work and entirely eliminating the need to strain.
And to assist the process internally, Dr. Pasricha advises eating 2 golden kiwis a day. They've been clinically proven to match the bowel motility power of prunes, but because of their specific fiber profile, they don't cause the extreme gas and bloating that prunes are famous for.
A great alternative.
Yeah.
2 golden kiwis and a footstool. You literally unlock Poophoria.
But we have to scale this concept down. Clearing waste at the macro level in the bathroom is obviously crucial. But what about clearing waste and delivering nutrients at the microscopic cellular level? Because a cell needs to eat and excrete just like whole organism does.
So what does this all mean for us? This brings us to our final source, Caroline Allen, and the complex world of fulvic and humic minerals. Now, I have to be honest, I'm looking at my expensive daily multivitamin rock sitting on my desk right now. Are you telling me my body is just actively rejecting this expensive pill because it isn't delivered through nature's plant-based ecosystem?
That is precisely what the research indicates. This raises an important question about how we view biology. The human body is not a combustion engine that just accepts raw, isolated chemicals. It operates as an intricate biological ecosystem.
Okay.
When you ingest high concentrations of isolated rock-based minerals synthesized in a lab, your cells basically struggle to recognize them. They're too large or improperly charged, so they just pass right through.
Yeah, that is why so much of traditional supplementation just passes straight through you, turning your urine bright yellow. It's basically an expensive waste of money that never penetrates the cell wall.
But the sources also highlight a major problem. Our modern agricultural soil is completely stripped and depleted, so even if we eat a perfect diet of whole vegetables, the food itself doesn't contain the mineral density it did 100 years ago.
Right, it's a huge issue.
Our cells are literally starved for the basic structural trace elements required to produce ATP, which is the foundational currency of cellular energy. If we can't get it from our food, and rock multivitamins don't absorb, what is the solution?
We have to look at how nature originally solved nutrient delivery, which is through fulvic and humic acids. These are naturally occurring plant-based minerals sourced from deeply decomposed ancient freshwater plants.
Okay, so what makes them different from the rock vitamins?
Fulvic acid is a biological marvel. It acts as a microscopic transporter with the unique ability to change its electrical polarity.
Like a reversible electromagnet.
Exactly like that. Outside the cell, fulvic acid carries a specific charge that allows it to bind to over 70 different trace minerals. It carries them easily through the cellular membrane and deposits them inside to fuel ATP production.
Wow.
Then, in a brilliant mechanical twist, it changes its polarity. This new charge allows it to grab onto heavy metals and bio-waste generated inside the cell, and it carries that trash back out to be eliminated.
So it literally acts as a microscopic delivery truck that drops off the groceries and takes out the garbage on its way out. That is incredible.
It really is. And while fulvic acid works inside the cell, humic acid operates in the gut. Humic molecules are much larger and act like a highly porous sponge, safely binding to toxins in the digestive tract and balancing the microbiome.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because these acids replicate nature's exact method of plant-to-cell nutrient delivery. The body recognizes them immediately and absorbs them without resistance.
The case study in the sources detailing Carolyn Allen's personal journey was shocking. She entered perimenopause highly depleted. She had severe brain fog, her adrenal glands had completely flatlined, and she had deep gum inflammation.
Yeah, a system totally crashing.
And after switching away from traditional supplements and incorporating these plant-based fulvic and humic minerals, her blood sugar stabilized, her oral health healed, and her physical energy fully returned in a matter of months. It is a stark reminder that you just cannot life hack your way out of a fundamental cellular deficiency.
You really can't. And it connects perfectly back to the concept of Poophoria. Whether you're unkinking a puborectalis muscle in the bathroom or using fulvic acid to pull the heavy metals out of a cell, optimizing human health is almost always about clearing the natural pathways so the body can do what it inherently knows how to do.
All right, for you listening, we promised you high ROI shortcuts, and here is your rapid-fire recap from today's deep dive. Number 1, turn your muscle into a metabolic sink and overcome anabolic resistance by prioritizing a 30-gram threshold of protein per meal. Number 2, short-circuit your body's fat storage hormone, insulin, by taking a brisk 10-minute walk immediately after dinner. Number 3, signal safety to your nervous system by widening your peripheral vision while looking at screens.
Crucial for office workers.
Definitely. Number 4, protect your hippocampus from toxic cortisol drips with the 4-7-8 breath. Number 5, rebuild your synaptic pathways and improve sleep architecture with magnesium L-threonate.
The brain windshield wiper.
Number 6, achieve Poophoria by elevating your knees in the bathroom and eating 2 golden kiwis. And finally, number 7, replenish your cellular ATP with nature's delivery trucks, fulvic, and humic minerals.
When you lay out all of those mechanisms side by side, it forces a really provocative realization. Look at the 90-degree toilets, the glowing 2D screens locking us into predator mode, the heavily depleted agricultural soil, the sedentary lifestyles where we just sit for hours immediately after eating heavy meals.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak when you list it all out.
Almost all of the physical and mental decline detailed in these sources is just our ancient, perfectly functioning biology reacting completely normally to a toxic modern environment.
Wow.
It really begs the question,
Yeah.
are we actually sick and in need of complex, expensive medical hacking? Or are our bodies just beautifully adapted to a natural world that we have accidentally erased?
That is the ultimate shift in perspective, isn't it? We aren't fundamentally broken, we're just living completely out of context. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We invite you to take just one of these mechanical overrides, maybe just the post-dinner walk to clear that glucose, or the 4-7-8 breath to calm the nervous system, and test it out in your own life today. See how quickly your biology responds when you finally pull the right levers. Until next time.